All right, we're back. It's COMP305, and it's week 3, lesson 3, part 3. And last day what we talked about was we were talking about mail pilot. So I'm going to bring up that right now. So let's get into our Unity. Now, if you're using Unity 5, these things that we're doing are kind of geared towards that. Not to say that they won't work in Unity 4. There's a bit more work that you have to do. And I'll continue to update the repository as well. This is where we left off last day. So if you bring this up, you can certainly kind of start from here. We're also going to go into, if you notice GitHub here. So here's github.com. And if I go into Centennial College, which is where we're storing our shared stuff, right here, Centennial College, that's pertinent to you guys. You can see that there's two. There's Mail Pilot Demo and Mail Pilot Section 1. So I've kind of done a few more things there, a little differently than us, but that's okay. Let's go into ours. This is where I'm going to be sharing your files and so on. And I'm going to update my my repo by updating this as we go, and I'll kind of go along with the flow of what we're doing. And again, something new that we're doing is if you go to Twitter and join me on Twitter, you'll get this idea of joining the concept board. You'll see that I'm tweeting about the concept board that I'm doing right now, and we're using the concept board. We're using the concept board to have some fun, right? But really, what we're going to use it as a communication tool where we can kind of pop in some quick programming ideas when it comes down to it. If I ask you for a controller, if I want to make a controller with you guys, like some kind of we're working on the island controller right now. If I want to, kind of ask you for some suggestions, I want you to quickly use this. It's almost like you're writing on the board, like the whiteboard. Okay, so pop it up there. It's anonymous. I can't tell who's doing what, so that's kind of makes it easier for you to do it. If you make a mistake, who cares? You can always comment on somebody else's work. That's okay too. Let's try not to wipe crap off like this. This is like, we don't want to continue to fight. That's not what we're there for to do. It's not supposed to be a distraction. It's supposed to be a way of communicating. I know this is what happens, by the way. When I do concept board for the first time in class, they do this every single time, right? It's like they try and fight with each other to get to gain control. It's almost like a war game, right? Let's not try and do that kind of stuff. It becomes a little bit annoying at times. So it's almost like we become like children when we do this, right? So let's not do that, or else I'll just kill the board and we'll start over, right? It's not bad. That's not really good. So I'll let you guys take care of that. Please, if I can ask, just to clean up your stuff for now. We're going to get back here and we'll do some programming. As long as we can put some stickies, I don't care what the background looks like. I really don't care. As long as we can communicate that kind of stuff. That's where I want to get to. That's fine, right? All right, so I'm going to kill Twitter for now, but I'm going to go back to what we're talking about here, which is the Unity stuff, right? So again, if I was to show you what we did last day, just as a review, I'm going to run this thing, and you can see that the island comes down in the same spot all the time, right? That's what's happening right now. So there's the island. It's coming down the same spot, right? And when we look at the island coming down, if I look, this is the game view. If I look at the scene view, this is what's really happening. I'm going to zoom out here. Take a look. The island actually is not a new island. It's not instantiating a new island. Actually, what it's doing is just resetting, right? So this idea is good, but I need to make it so that it goes in its own spot, right? So again, I need to use this random protocol that we normally would use for our code. So here's our island controller right now. Let's take a look at where it looks like. You can also bring up your code if you download. If you don't have your code, or if you haven't followed along, you can always download the stuff from GitHub. I got another joiner. Forgive me while I have these people, right? And again, it won't be as bad the next time when we do this. It's always worse in the beginning because it's like, hey, I want to join you on Twitter, kind of thing, and here's the request. There you go, Jen. And then, of course, you can join concept board and fool around. Okay, so what are we doing here for our island controller? We got pretty much everything we need, right? But here's a bit of an issue that we've got going on, right? One, when I reset, I only reset my y coordinate to 270. So it actually resets to the exact same spot. What I need to do is here on the bottom where it shows our x coordinate, when we reset, I want that to be random. Okay, cool. I need to decide what the range is going to be though. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to my scene view here, and I'm going to zoom in on my player, or sorry, on my island. Here's my island. I'm going to zoom in here. So I'm going to go F to zoom in here, right? And if you notice, my island right now is kind of set up at minus 270. Let's put it back to 270, which is where it should go. That's where it should start. And I'm going to use the W key, or the icon up here, to move my island to the left and to the right to kind of show you where I want it to start. So a maximum I want to kind of start about here. And if I look over here, it looks like it would be about 284. And let's say if I focus in even more, you can see that I got a little bit more room to go. I could probably go as far as this, about 288. And remember, we talked about symmetry last time. It can probably do the same thing on the other side. If I pull it on this side, that's how far I probably want it to go, approximately there. Let's say a little bit less, so maybe up to there. What's the number? I got about 288, maybe 290 max. So I'm thinking 290 and minus 290, right? So that's the kind of range that I want it to be in. Right? Let's go back and put this to 0 for a second, because that's where I want it to spawn, right? At 0 for now. And let's go back to the code and fix that, right? So that means that I want a random range here, and that's the command actually. Let's try typing this in, random.range, right? It's kind of built in as a static method in Unity here, in MonoDevelop. And it's looking for 2 values, right? Now, normally you can put in integer values or floating point values, which is what we need. So I'm going to put in minus 290 for the first range, the first number, and then 290, and then 290 for the second one, right? And I'm using the F notation to indicate that it's a float, right? So now it's going to give me a random location for where this thing resets every time we run the game. So let's try this out now. So I'm going to go back to kind of zoom out here, right? And I'm going to use the hand tool or the Q key to move things around. There we go. And then I'm just going to run, and if everything's good, it's going to reset in a random place. Take a look, right? So now the island isn't going to always be in the exact same location. Now, that's weird that it's coming in the middle. Usually, it kind of does, one in one place or the other. It is random. You can see that it's going to 290 and 290. Let's take a look at the options. Here's 219. I can actually see the actual, what the result is, and it gives me a random range. Okay, so again, going back to the code, what did I do to make that happen? All I did was, when I reset my reset position, which is a variable that I'm calculating, all I'm doing is using a random range. I'm using the random range method to populate the x coordinate randomly between minus 290 and 290. Okay, so very quick how that's done. Hey, now that we've got the island controller, I can almost make the cloud controller. This is the next piece that I want to do, right? Now, before I do that, I want to update my island controllers to make sure that you guys are up to date with what I have. So I'm going to go to desktop, and inside there I'm going to go to Unity projects, where I have my Unity projects, and I'm going to go to COMP305 mail pilot demo, and inside there, this is yours. I'm going to go into git add dot git commit minus m, and I'm going to say something like updated island controller class, right? Because that's what I really did. And then update, and then git push from origin, which is me, to master, right? To the master up in the remote. And now our git is updated. If you wanted to just grab that little code, as opposed to you typing it alone, or if you made a mistake, if it doesn't work for you, at least you have it there. Okay, cool. So let's make the cloud, right? So we did the island. We need the clouds. It's kind of boring without something to avoid. The islands is where we get our points from. The clouds is where we have to avoid. How do we add those in? So again, I would right-click as an example, and we want to add in a new sprite. So right-click here. I'm going to go 2D object sprite. There it is. Oh, I don't want it to be part of the island. That's not cool. Let me move that away, right? And let's just kind of move it down on the hierarchy so we can see it, right? I'm going to click twice on it and name this thing cloud with a capital C. Okay, cool. Here's my cloud. I need a sprite, a script. But let's go back for a second, just because I just remembered something. So for player, we tagged it as player. For ocean, it's untagged, right? And for island is untagged. I want to tag these up. And the reason why is because sometimes we can refer to these in code by using the tag, right? How do I create a new tag? Because there is no ocean tag here, right? I can go to add tag, right? And inside there, I'm going to kind of create a new tag, and I'm going to make one that's called ocean, right? And another one that's called island. And hey, you know, we're making a cloud. Might as well take care of that too, right? So I'm just going to click that one and click the cloud tag, right? And again, this is just, you know, tags we can use to share our code from one script to another. That's what it's really for. But now nothing's happened. It's not like my ocean tag has been tagged. I got to actually go in there and select my my ocean tag now, which relates to my ocean. I can, for my island, I'm going to select my island tag, which relates to my island. And now with my new cloud, I might as well tag it with my cloud tag. Again, all these are friendly names that we can refer to them later on if I have to refer to them in code. All right. Okay, cool. This is good. I want to add my new script. So for my cloud, I'm going to go add component, right? Here's my add component. And I want to add a script. I haven't added a sprite yet. I will in a second. So here's my add component, new script. I want to call this cloud controller. Here's my cloud controller. And I'm going to create an add. Okay, that's going to add my script in no man's land here, right? And I want to kind of take it in the asset root. I want to take it and put it inside my scripts folder by dragging and dropping. There it is. So now if I click scripts, I have 3 scripts: cloud, island, and ocean. Okay, those are the 3 scripts I have. Well, for my cloud, if I go back to my cloud component, one thing I know is if you look at the right hand, I don't have anything from my sprite. We talked about this last day. I need to select a sprite or point to it. There's 2 ways to do that. I can drag and drop like I did last time, or I can click the little dot here, and I can select the sprite that I already have. And if you notice, I have a sprite for cloud. It's called cloud, right? So that's my cloud sprite. Now, there's a problem with that. If I click on cloud, here's my cloud itself. It's a bit of issues, right? We have first, my pixels per unit should be 1 because we're trying to do pixel perfect. A game that's pixel perfect. Change bilinear to point. That's one thing we did. Make sure that maximum size. Some of you people that are using Unity 4, maximum size defaults to 1024. Make it 2048 so we're in the same. That's why it might look different if you don't do that. And then click apply. Right? If you notice, then the cloud kind of appears. We don't want it to stay there though. That's not really the proper starting position. We want it to go to position a little bit differently. So I'm going to click on the cloud object, right? And by the way, we also have a problem with the layering, right? Let's take a look at our order and layer, right? So right now, if I click on the ocean, it's 0, order and layer. If I click on the island, it's 1. Player so far is 2. You know what? I might as well make keep player at 2, but make my cloud go to 3, right? And if you notice now, my cloud is on top of my my island, and probably can go over my player as well. Why? Because I want my clouds to fly above my player, right? And above my island. I don't want my islands to somehow have a cloud underneath them. It would be like almost like having something submerged underneath the ocean. That doesn't make any sense, right? That doesn't look right. So that's where I have to change my order and layer. Again, it's the stacking order that I'm changing on the 2-dimensional view here. Okay, so that's one thing. The next thing is I'm just going to click on my cloud again and click on the W key or click the icon here, right? And I'm going to move my cloud so that it's outside of my viewable area. This is probably where it should start, something like this, right? If you notice what I'm looking at here on the right from a y-coordinate perspective, it looks like 330. Let's take a look. I'm just going to put 330 in there, and I'm going to zoom in by pressing F. I'm going to actually zoom in even further in my view, and I can see that, you know, my cloud is nicely outside of my window. That's what I'm looking at, right? But what I want this to do is start at 330, and then when it goes down, I'm going to do a boundary check. So here's my cloud. I'm going to go down, and as it goes underneath the window, it looks like it's minus 330. That works for me. Let's just zoom in there to make sure, right? And you can see that if I click away, that my cloud is physically outside of my viewport, which is where it should be. So that's good. So 330 and minus 330, and we're noticing these patterns of symmetry, right? Once I see patterns of symmetry, it does a couple things to me. It makes me say, hey, this could be a class. And it also says, hey, I don't need to have 2 values. All I need is 1 value. And I just have to reverse the signs, right? So there's some ways of optimizing our code that we're not going to fully go into today. Some parts we're going to optimize, but we don't have a chance to do everything if we want to finish this tutorial today. Okay, so let's do that. So we know that our cloud should start at 330. That is the spawning point, if you will, for our cloud object. Let me save that. Let me go back into our code now. And if I go into my scripts, and if I double click on my cloud controller, it looks like the default cloud controller. But you know what? It's so identical in terms of what we needed to do as the island controller. Might as well copy everything from here onto the other side. All right, so I'm just going to take everything underneath this curly brace here. I'm going to kind of come to here and copy it, right? And I'm going to go into my cloud controller here, and I'm going to just inside this void and start. I'm just going to take this and replace it by pasting. Right, so I've got everything the exact same. And again, if you notice, I'm trying to be generic with what I say, check bottom boundary and so on. It's minus 290 and 290. This isn't going to work for the cloud, for my right and left. I still want it to start at different positions, but minus 290 and 290 won't work anymore. I know that this is wrong. This has got to be 330, right? Let's put 330 there. And this has got to be, 330. Because the y coordinate is going to start off a little bit different. So minus 330. If it goes beyond 330, it's going to reset to 330. But my minus 290 and 290 has got to change too, right? So let me go back to our Unity view, and I'm going to kind of pull this view down a little bit and go where the cloud is and do the same trick I did last time. So I'm going to kind of select the cloud, use my selection tool, right, or press the W key, right? Here it is. And now let's move this thing so that it kind of comes to the boundary and see what we got. To me, it looks like it's going to be something like minus 205. And my guess is minus 205 to 205 is what the range is going to be, right? And if you notice, I'm pretty good there. That's probably the farthest I want to go. I don't want half a cloud sticking out of the top here. And the reason for that is because it'll mess us up in terms of where the cloud spawns and where it kind of continues. We might have a cloud half spawning the whole way, right? And that's kind of makes no sense. Want to put all of our objects in on our screen, right? So 205 and minus 205 is where it's going to be, which means those are the values, right? And if you notice, my speed value is 0. Let's make it 5 again, just to match it up with the island. But there's a problem here. We're going to talk about it in a second. Okay, let's go back down to the island, to the script. So it's minus 205 here, and 205, right? That's what I'm doing here. Oops. 205F, I'll be okay. All right, and let's save it and run it and see what it does, right? Well, it's not exactly what we want, but it kind of accomplishes some pieces of it. Well, let's take a look what it does. Okay, it looks like the island and the cloud are kind of aligned in time, right? Which is okay. Sometimes maybe we'll have this happen, right? This is okay. But the other thing is sometimes I want the cloud to run a little faster. And here I'm in real time. And if you notice, I'm looking at the cloud controller script. On the right, it says 5. Let's change this to 10 and see what happens, right? When the cloud is a little faster, that's a pretty fast-moving cloud to avoid, 10. I don't think I ever wanted to go faster than 10 in terms of our speed. That's crazy, right? And the other thing is, how about slow? Maybe I want it to be slower than the island sometimes, like a slower drifting cloud, okay? An example would be 2. That's kind of the speed that might be the slowest I want to make it go to. So it looks like there's a bit of a parallax effect. You're flying, and there's a slow-moving cloud, and it's a different rate than the ocean. All right, so that's pretty cool. It makes it so that the cloud is a different object. It doesn't look like it's paired up with the ocean. It gives us the illusion that the cloud is above us or flying, at a different level, different speeds, and so on. So I think I want to make my speed variable from 2 to 10. Okay, that means that my speed that I'm using here, it's not right. I have to reprogram this variable, right, so that it gives me a range, right, from 2 to 10. Okay, now we're going to go to concept board, and I want you to give me some suggestions. Now, if you notice, it goes back to normal. How should I recode my my speed value so that it gives me a range? Does anyone have any recommendations on how to do this, right? Because I want to be able to recode my my speed. So on the inspector, it gives me a range, a random range from one range to another range. Okay, so when I put those numbers in, I want to use them up here from a speed perspective. So instead of it minusing or subtracting a fixed speed, I want to change my speed on reset. That's what I want it to do. So every time I reset, I want to reset my speed, right? But how do I make it first? The only code I want on concept board is how do I make it so it's available with a range right, on the inspector. So I'm going to go to concept board. Hopefully you guys have some ideas, right? And let's see what you guys got. Let's browse here. We're moving things around here. All right, so here's one, random range 2 to 10. Oh, this is the way we can do it, random range from 2 to 10. That's part of it. But we need to add, maybe we need to make this available to the, we want to make it available to the inspector. And that's just one part of our code. So that's not bad. That's one piece. Anyone else have any suggestions about what else we can put up there? So instead of it being random range 2 to 10, that's the code that I'm going to use at the end. But it won't be 2 to 10. It'll be the name of the variable that I'm going to put in there because I want to control it on the inspector. So maybe 2 to 10 isn't right? I want to be able to concentrate on it. Anyone else have any other ways of putting it out there? We kind of talked about this last week, right? Anybody? Wow. Maybe not. I got some person typing away, right? I'm going to bring this one up just so we can see this suggestion for everybody, right? So I'm going to go back to create. I'm going to go to click on this thing. I'm going to click on someone's suggestion. I'm going to bring this up a little higher, and I'm going to move my little message aside and maybe make it a little bit bigger so we can see it's just my message as opposed to, you know, something like, okay, there we go. So public float random min, public float random max. Not bad. These are two different values, random min and random max, right? But could there be something that's more contextual? I like this idea. Could there be something that's more contextual than this, right, for speed? Because random min and random max, we're going to do that for within our random range, right? These are definitely going to be on the something that we see on the inspector. I didn't take that away, by the way. That wasn't me, right? So please, let's not do that. Let's not take away stuff unless it's you. There you are. Let's think about something else that makes sense up here, right? Anything else that anyone suggests? I'm going to give you another minute or so, and then I have to get back to it because we don't have a lot of time. So I got to get this thing done, right? But I want to hear from you guys what you think. I mean, we've been working with this code for a bit. So what else can we do to make this work, right? Anybody have an idea? Okay, looks like no one does. This is the right idea, but yeah, that's part of it. Someone was inserting that into random range. You take the random min and random max. That would be it. That would be what we do. But we want one kind of grouping of values here. How do I group a value and put it up on the inspector, right? So I have two values. It's almost like I can minimize things, like almost like creating this idea of a boundary, if you will. We're going to do this again and again. So we're going to have to think about this very quickly, right? Okay, I'll go back and do it with you. All right, so here we are back in code, and I've got my floating speed value. This is cool. But wouldn't it be nice if I had a little class that had two elements, two properties, right? One of them was a min, and the other one was a max. And what I'm saying is, it would start off at the top, right? So a minimum and maximum speed, min, max kind of speed, right? So I could do something like this. I could call it the speed class, right? So I could do something like a public speed class, right? Public class speed. We have a problem, right? We have two classes here in our code. Public class speed, right, with a capital S, right? And my public class speed, right? I want to add in two values. I want to make them public floats. Maybe, for example, you know, kind of a min speed value, right? And a max speed value. I could do that. But the problem is that this won't appear on the inspector. How do I make this class appear on the inspector, right? Let's go to concept board. Instead of putting your hand up, let's put a concept board and see what I would do here. What's the code that I would use to put it up on the inspector while I answer this Twitter request? It's madness today. It's bound to happen, though. I knew it was going to happen. All right, go ahead. Let's see what you think. What's the way to take that little code I just put up, and I want to make it available on. I want to make it available up on the inspector. Anyone have an idea of what to do? Put it up on concept board. I want to see your ideas reflected, right? So that way, when people are watching this video later on, then they can see what you put up, some suggestions, right? And they're probably going to be screaming when they watch the video, like, "Do this, God damn it!" Right? And that's okay. They can kind of zoom by this if they don't know what it is, the answer, right? So what would you think it is? If anyone has any other suggestions, I'll give you another minute for this one, right? The way to do it is think about, someone's got it. Someone's got it. System serializable is the way to go. That's the answer, right? System serializable is the way, right? So let's go back and put that in. So I'm gonna go back to my code. Now I gotta put my system serializable on the top of my class. So I go system capital S dot serializable, right? And when I do that with square brackets, what it does is two things happen here. One, it makes it available to my inspector. Two, it makes it available to my entire program, all right? Be aware of this, right? So I can use this speed min max value anywhere in my code now, all right? So this is kind of the way I'm doing it. Okay, this is my min speed. Now I'm not done, right? I declared a public float speed, right? But that's not what I want to do. It's got to be public speed, capital S, speed now, right? Value. That's the first thing I got to do. So now I've got the speed value, but my speed, this doesn't compute anymore, right? That doesn't compute at all. It can't be this, right? We have to make another variable that we're going to share, right? That's a kind of an instance variable that we're going to use. And let's make it private for now. Right? We're going to make a private, here is our private instance variables. We're going to work a little harder for our cloud, right? Variables. And we're going to make a private variable, and we're going to call this one, because remember, we're going to do this. It's going to be of type float. We can make it of type float to be compatible with speed, right? And we're going to make it underscore capital C current speed. Okay, current speed. And we're going to keep track of this because current speed is the one that we want to use, right? Speed is going to give us two values, right? Min and max, right? So this is what we want to put in here, current speed. So we're going to say this dot underscore current speed. Now we don't have a current speed value yet, but we put it in here. So my current speed is going to be variable. That's the first thing, right? So that's the one thing we have to do. Second, here on reset, we just like we did the random range, right? From minus 205 to 205, right? I want to do the same kind of thing with speed. I want to kind of make it so that we do a random number up down here. And the way to do that, of course, is to kind of do one of these. To say, when we reset, we say this dot underscore current speed then, right, is equal to, right, random range. Here's random range from, and now this is the beautiful thing, right? Speed dot, and look what I have options. I have min speed, right? To speed dot max speed, right? Because I can kind of decide what it's going to be. So that is what it's going to give us. It's going to give us a minimum speed and a maximum speed every reset. Every time my cloud resets, the speed of my cloud is going to change, right? So it's going to be a fast cloud or a slow cloud every time we reset. And we're going to get these values from our inspector. Let's check to see if that's correct. I'm going to save my code. I'm going to go back up to my cloud. I'm going to click away and click back. And if you notice now in the inspector, I have a speed value that's variable. I have a min speed here and a max speed. And I did that with that system serializable thing that you guys recommended. So here's 2, that's the minimum speed, and 10 would be the maximum speed. Now that I've got that, I'm going to save it, and let's test it to see if it works the way we think. So I'm going to click play. And now I've got a really slow cloud. It's a little slower than the, than the island. And if you notice, there's some clouds that move a little faster, and we also have clouds that move slower, right? So to make it a little bit more interesting. Yes, we kind of mission accomplished on this one. Okay, that's one part for the cloud. But you know what? My cloud can't go just straight down, man. Come on. My clouds, they have a little bit of a drift. Okay, so I want to make a drift, right? That goes kind of with my cloud to the left and to the right. And my thinking is probably around 2 and minus 2 as a speed, right? My drift is 2 and minus 2. I want to make a range about this. And you know what? I don't know if 2 and minus 2 is correct. So I want to kind of create a property that kind of is going to be available in the inspector that's going to be very similar to what I just did. And I want to make it, right, so that when I'm here, right, I mean, I have right now, I'm not going to change my boundary check, but I don't just want my current Y position to change, my current position Y, I want my current position X to change, right, with because of my drift, right, this drift value. So give me some suggestions. First of all, what should we name our variable? Should it be public or private, right? And I wanted to make it on the inspector. I also wanted to have a range, right? Think about these things I'm asking you to do, right? So from -2 to 2, as an example, or from one value to another. How do I do this? Let's go to concept board, and let's see if you guys have thought about a solution. Okay, I got a couple of things we can wipe away. If someone, whoever put these up, can take them away, because we've kind of dealt with these ones. And then, oh, someone said min drift and max drift. I like that idea. Let's see if we can kind of pull up what it says here. All right, so system serializable public class drift. Let's make it a little bigger for those people that are, whoever made this one, make it a little bit bigger. Right, so that's it. And then it looks like public class drift. This is cool. And then a public float, min drift and max drift. That's perfect. That's good. Hey, hold on a second, guys. Just FYI, right? When you do min drift and max drift, as an example, which I like, right? This idea is going to be available to all of our objects, not just to this one, right? Once you do system serializable, right? Two things to note: system serializable has to be touching the class. Okay, it can't be. You can't put a space here. You may get an error depending on the version that you're using of Unity. So yeah, that's how it's got to be like this. That's perfect. Okay, so let's use this code, right? System serializable and then public class drift to create our thing. I would recommend also that the class names are uppercase, right? As a convention, right? Because we want to kind of make class names uppercase. Let's do that. So I'm going to go into mono develop here, and we're going to add in this other class. So here's I'm going to kind of take this as a blueprint from my new class, the system serializable, and kind of put it in there. And instead of speed, we're going to make this called drift, right? And we're just going to do the same ideas: min drift and max drift. Here we go, min drift and max drift. We're just going to make a value that we need to use. Okay, that's part one. All right. Part two, once we've got our values for min drift and max drift, we need to put them in and randomly select select the value. I need another private instance variable, some way of first of all my drift. Then, right? It has to be public because I need to make it available on the inspector. So public. Our final drift value is going to be called drift, right? So drift would be the class. And our local variable here inside of our class, or our class instance variable, is going to be called drift, lowercase d, but it's also public, right? But I need some kind of something that matches along with current drift in order for me to, to kind of just like how private float current speed is. So I'm just going to put that in. So private float underscore current drift, because the drift is going to change every time we reset our cloud. Right? I got my variables, all right? And now this is cool. I've got kind of a blueprint for how to do it. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it underneath, and I'm going to change the first one from y to x. And I want to make it from one value to the other. Let's make it plus equals, just to appease the gods, right? And I'll say current drift. And that's what it's going to equal to. Current drift. It's going to be the value that we're going to use that's going to add or subtract from this current position. And then the current position vector is going to change so that when we update GameObject.getComponent transform, it's going to give us both the x and the y components that we need. Now we need to do one other thing. We need to do one of these, right? So we need to kind of grab one of these, right? And put them in here, right? So instead of current speed, we're going to call this current drift, with the random range of, and this is, I'll just wipe these out so we can see how it goes from scratch. So it's drift dot min drift to drift dot max drift. Again, we do this because we have this range that we're going to get, and we're doing this in the reset method. Here's our reset method. Resets, we'll say resets the game object. Right, that's what it does. We're doing this in the reset method because it happens every time the object leaves the screen. It's almost like a new object comes into being. It's not really a new object. We're just resetting the old object, but making it look like a new object. It's a trick, right? We're using our resources. Let's go back to Unity now. And then if we click away and click back, our island has, or sorry, our cloud has another couple of values min drift and max drift that's available in the inspector if we did it right. And I'm going to kind of put in there kind of a -2 and a 2. This kind of symmetry makes me mad, right? Because it means I could probably have used one value somehow. And when we do optimization, we'll talk about optimization another day. We could probably just use one value and just use a positive or negative sign. How to do that? It's not actually not that difficult at all, but we'll leave it as is for now, just from an understanding perspective. Okay, let's see what it does. I'm going to run this thing, and if we don't have any errors, then we'll have a bit of a drift now, right? So the cloud kind of drifts left and right. This is what the game effect is going to be, right? Where the cloud comes straight down, that cloud comes drifting on an angle, a faster speed, a slower speed, makes the cloud a little bit more random, right? This is kind of like what we talked about on the assignment and said, your opponents, things that you have to avoid should be, should be good enough so that they can drift around, kind of thing. And they have to have a little bit of AI. This is our behavior we're programming in. Really, when we talk about AI for game opponents, we're talking about programming in a set of behaviors, right? And this is what this does. Whenever this cloud spawns, the behavior of the cloud changes every time to make it random, to make it more challenging for the player to avoid, okay? What is it really doing? It's doing this. Let's take a look at the actual respawning. So here's the actual screen, and boom, it respawns, right? And then as it leaves the screen, it has to leave way over here because I'm not checking for this boundary or this boundary, right? So the cloud sometimes can leave the screen for a while, depending on their angle of drift, right? So that's the kind of stuff that'll happen. Now, one cloud is good, and I like what we're doing here, min speed and max speed and everything else, right? Let me go back to our code here. One thing I notice a lot is that we're putting in some hard, kind of like, hard-coded values, -330 and 330, -205 and 205. It's almost like I'm creating our reset positions or our boundaries, right? Wouldn't it be nice? Here's another question I have. Wouldn't it be nice if I can make these all visible and accessible from the inspector so that I can put in my values? And once I do this, once I put it in from the inspector, I don't have to recode it here in my code. In fact, I can reuse this class for all of my game objects, right? Not just for this one, specifically just for my cloud, but for all my game objects. So can you think of something I can do, as an example, very similar to what we did with this speed and drift, some kind of a new serializable class that we can use for both my x values, right, random x, so x boundaries, and y boundaries, hint, hint, right, that I could use to kind of put this up in here so that I can choose my boundaries and have actual values in there instead of hard-coded values. Okay, I'm going to go back to concept board and see what you guys have come up with while I've been talking, right? So I want to make, some kind of way of this minimum y and minimum x, so that way I can put those values in there as opposed to hard-coded boundaries. Anyone have a recommendation from a coding perspective? It's very similar to what we see here with our system serializable for drift, whoever put that up, but also, it's got to make sense for us from a boundary perspective. I'm giving you the answer, right? Let's see if someone can type it in quick. There we go. I'll make it a little larger and put it up a little bit for us. I'll move it up for you guys to see it. Here we go. That's almost correct. This one here. Oh, someone's done almost. This is almost correct. This one. Min boundary, max boundary. Because the boundaries are going to be different. I have a boundary on the x coordinate and a boundary on the y coordinate. So I need a little bit more than this. I need more than 2 values. I need 4 values in here. Just name them properly for me, please. You almost got it perfect. So it can't be just min boundary and max boundary. It has to be something that works for both the x and y coordinates. Right? It's pretty simple, but let's think about what this would be that makes sense. Okay, we almost got it here. Someone put min boundary max. Someone's kind of writing that in the red. All right. Anyone else have any recommendations? I'm going to go do it myself in a second, but I want you guys to think about it. Here we go. Max x. See, that's a problem. I like your idea. Max x boundary, min y boundary, right? Do we really need the word boundary if the class is called boundary? So let's use. I like this idea. What I'm going to go with this. I'm going to say min x and max x, min y and max y, and we'll make the boundary class that's system serializable just like this. Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, I like your thinking. So I'm going to go back to code, and I'm going to just copy one of these. Remember, this is available across my application now. It's not just for this particular class. And we're going to talk about this again. Should this actually be here in this class or not? We'll make this a boundary. And instead of min drift and max drift, we'll just change this to min x, capital X, and max x, and maybe x max, because that makes sense, and x min, because max x doesn't make sense. It's not as cool. And this one will be y min a little bit differently than we did last time from a, and then y max, right? So those things we got to be put in there. So we got our boundary. Now we have to actually instantiate an object, so it's available in our inspector. So I'm going to go again, public, right, boundary with lowercase boundary, right? Now that I have that, I'm going to save it, right? I need to remember the values though, eh? So for x, so for y, it's minus 330 and 330. So let's go back into this to save them. So here's I'm going to click away and click back. And now I have my boundary, right? So y is, the minimum is going to be 330, right? And the maximum is going to be, or actually minus 330 is the minimum, because minimum means like the negative value, let's say, to 330. And then it's the other value, because I'm short of memory, is minus 205 and 205. Let's do that. So that's the actual x coordinate, minus 205 and 205. I'm putting those values in there before I change my code up. Oops. There we go. I'll save that, and I'll save my scene. And I'll go back into my code, and now I can use them, right? So this is my min y. So it's going to be called boundary min y, or y min. There we go, y min, that's what I called it, right? And this is boundary dot y max, so my maximum, so max, put it back up to the maximum value, and then it goes to the minimum value. If it's less than the minimum value, it resets. That's what this means, right? And then again, this is boundary dot x min, and then this is boundary dot x max. Now this is really good practice, guys, because now it makes my class very generic. I can use this class for any one of my objects, right? Not just for my cloud. And it's a nice little class we can reuse. And also it has some built-in serializable classes that we can add when we use this class. Now here's the good thing, right? And we can talk about this. Should I put these serializable classes inside of my cloud controller? And my answer probably for now would be no, because we might want to have another kind of controller or game component or game object that kind of holds all these kind of classes. All right, we'll talk about that later. All right, so we've done our duty here. Let's go back into Unity, right, and rerun this thing to make sure it runs the same way it's supposed to, right? So there it is. It's kind of got drift, and we'll go to our scene and see what it's actually doing. It's kind of drifting to the left and to the right, and all this kind of stuff, right? This is all good. Now let's take it one step further. I don't want just one cloud, right? I want like 3 clouds. How do I do that? Well, there's 2 things I'm going to do here. Now watch carefully. This is the trick. We're going to do some tricks here. Tricks, right? I have my cloud. I'm happy with it, right? I'm happy with my cloud object. I'm so happy, in fact, that I want to duplicate it a bunch of times. This is a great case for a prefab. Right? I'm going to take my cloud, I'm going to drag it inside my prefabs folder. When I do this, a couple things happen. Now my cloud becomes a blueprint for other clouds, right? And on the left, you can see my cloud is blue, right? You can know this. It's a slightly different. You can't hardly see it here on my hierarchy, but it is. Here's something I want to do. I want to test more than one cloud in my game for now. I can drag and drop from my prefab onto my hierarchy a couple more times, like this. 1, 2. I got 3 clouds now. So I've dragged and dropped my cloud into my prefab and then dragged it back onto the hierarchy. All right, 3 clouds. Let's see how this looks. All right, I got a few clouds now. This is almost where we wanted it, right? We got a few clouds. Some of them are moving faster than others. Some of them are slow. It makes it really challenging now for my player, right? To kind of avoid all the clouds to get to the island so I can get my points, right? That's the whole meat of the game, right? And sometimes you have no clouds on the screen. Let's see what it's doing on the scene side, right? So actually on the gameplay side, you can see how they're resetting in different positions. All the clouds are acting independently because they're objects, but they're made from the same blueprint. In fact, if anything, they're being instantiated, right, in my scene, right, in different positions. That's what it's looking like. They're not really being instantiated. All we're doing is resetting them, right? Okay, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to throw 3 clouds in here on the left? That's not cool, right? I want them to be, I want to set in my game, I want to set my game up so I can set a value, and however many clouds I want can come in at the same time. If I want 5 clouds, for whatever reason, that would be impossible to play. You know, I want 5 clouds. If I want 1 cloud, if I was going to do a starter level or some kind of tutorial level, then I want 1 cloud. I want some variability or flexibility with my game. How do I do that? Well, let's do a couple things first of all. Let's stop the game, right? And let's delete all these objects. I'm going to delete my first cloud, delete, right-click, delete, second cloud, and then I got 1 cloud left over. Should I delete this one too? Is that okay? Or am I in trouble if I do that? It's okay. If I delete this, once I've created it as a prefab, it sticks around, right? Let me do a couple things for you so you can catch up. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back up into my terminal here, and I'm going to do git add dot. I'm going to do git commit -m. I'm going to say added cloud prefab, right? That's what I really did. I'm going to get git push from origin to master, and now what it's going to do is you're going to have a copy of this prefab with you up online. So go check it out. There'll be a copy of the prefab, and if you weren't able to code it as fast as I was, or you couldn't follow along, or something happened with your version of Unity that you're working on, at least you have the code that you can go ahead and keep track of with us, right? Okay, so that's cool. We've got that going on. I need some kind of overall, an overviewer, the overseer game object that oversees the entire game, right? What would we call this game object? Well, how would we make it? One way we're going to do it is this. We're going to right-click here in the hierarchy, and I'm going to create an empty object, create empty, right? And my default name for the object is game object. I'm going to change this default name to game controller. That's the new game controller. It's kind of the overseer, if you will. It's not actually going to appear anywhere in our scene, but it's going to be almost like a placeholder for holding certain scripts. Okay, that's what it's going to be using, and to control our game. So this is my game controller. I also want to tag this thing as a game controller, right? That's one thing. And if you notice, game controller is the default. I want to reset its position in the game world to 0. So we can do it like this, or we can go into our gear here and reset. Click reset, and then so it kind of resets everything to 0. There it is. Not that that makes any difference for us. And we're going to add a new script to this game controller, right? So I'm going to go add component all the way to the bottom where it says new script, and I'm going to add a script called game controller. Okay, so here's my script, but unfortunately when I go to my asset root, it puts my script out in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to kind of drag and drop this script into my scripts folder, right? Just keep organized here. And when I go into my scripts folder, right, you can see now I have a game controller script. I'm going to double click on this script. And this is okay. I've got this piece right here, right? So what do I want this to do? I want to be able to spawn my clouds, right, as often as I want to. I want to do it one time, right, because I'm not going to respawn my clouds. I'm going to reset my clouds because my cloud behavior is already there. It's embedded in each of my cloud objects. I'm not going to rewrite that behavior. That makes no sense. What I want to do is I just want to spawn my clouds, right, the number of clouds that I need one time. Okay, that's one thing I want to do. The other thing is I need to expose something on the inspector that allows me to put in the number of clouds. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and kind of declare some public instance variables here. Our public instance variables. And we're going to call these things, it's going to be called public. We're going to make it a float. Oh, sorry, an integer. And then we're going to call this cloud count. Right? Cloud count. We have a variable that's called cloud count now. Okay, cool. So we can get from the inspector the number of clouds that we want to instantiate. Okay, that's cool, cool. Okay, here's something. I want to be able to call this method one time that I'm going to write. And I want to make it a method because maybe there might be an opportunity later on to call it again, right? So maybe what I want to call is a method, a new method called something, right? And I wanted to, generate, or instantiate new clouds, generate clouds, right? Maybe that's a good name for the method. So we'll just call this method generate clouds. I want to make it a private method because it doesn't have to be something that I have to access from outside of my screen or outside of my class, right? So we're going to make it a private, void. It's not going to return anything. We're going to call this underscore, right? Capital G for generate clouds, right? Now I've called it different things in the other tutorial I did last night, but that's not an issue, right? It's going to serve the same purpose. Here's my generates clouds method. And what do I want this thing to do? I want it to loop through cloud count times, and every time it loops through, I want it to generate or instantiate my new cloud, right? That's what I want it to do. So let's make a for loop. So I'm going to say for, right, where my count, or it's going to be an integer value, int count is equal to 0, right, where count is less than, right, the cloud count value, which is this dot cloud count, right? No underscore, because it's a public variable. Then count plus plus. So I want to kind of go through the clouds and count up. I'm going to go through these this loop, right? Okay, cool. That's one. And then what do I want to do here? I want to use the magic word here, right? Instantiate. By the way, instantiate is something that exists in all objects. It's not part of the game object class. It's inherited from the overall object class, right? And I'm going to instantiate what? All right. What am I instantiating? I need to make a reference to something that I'm instantiating here. I got a problem, right? I don't have a reference to my cloud class, right? How do I do that? Well, first of all, let's just put it in there and say cloud, right? Not cloud count, cloud, right? Now, if you notice it glows red, red is bad in the code in monodevelop, right? It means that there is no cloud right now that you're instantiating, right? Okay, but let's assume that there is for now. And where do I want this to happen? I only want it to happen once. Does it belong in my start method or my update method? Remember, the update method triggers every frame. Do I want it to instantiate every frame? That's crazy. That would be like, hundreds of clouds every frame would come up, right? Or every second. That's bad. So I don't need the update method for now. I want it to go in my start method because my start method only triggers one time for the life of my object. So when my game object comes into being, right, when it gets instantiated, I want to instantiate other objects one time. So that's inside my start menu. So I'm going to do that here. It's my start method. So I'm going to say this dot, this dot underscore generate clouds. I'm going to call it from inside my start method one time. Okay, so assuming that I have a cloud to reference, I can generate a number of clouds in my start method at the beginning. Now that's interesting. We're going to talk about what I'm saying here because that makes some new presumptions. That means that not only in my hierarchy, before I continue, in my hierarchy, these objects I have here are being instantiated, right? Anything that's in my hierarchy has been instantiated, which means that the classes that I'm writing here, my objects that I'm creating, are just classes, right? And when they're in my hierarchy, how they arrive there, there's different ways of arriving there. One is the instantiate keyword, right? Or the method, right? And I can also drag and drop them like I've done, or create them like we did before. They are physically instantiated in our scene, right? Let's go back. So that means that this game object or game controller object that I'm creating is being instantiated. When it gets instantiated, it's going to call the generate clouds method so that it can instantiate a bunch of clouds. Well, we need a reference to the cloud object. There's two ways to do this, okay? I'm going to show you the easy way. The harder way is by using the tag name, okay? And I'm not going to do that today. We're going to do it another day. The easy way is to do this. Public game object cloud. Why does this work? I don't have a cloud reference right now, but I've created a public game object on my inspector. Let's go to the inspector and see what it does when I save. So when I click on my controller, my game controller, I have this cloud here, take a look in my inspector, right, that has none. Oh, what should I do to connect my cloud to this object here? What do I do? Any ideas? Drag it in. Right? So I'm going to go to my prefab. I'm going to click my cloud and drag my cloud prefab, yeah, thank you, prefab into my cloud container here. That's what this is doing. This, I've just created a reference between my prefab and a reference to my cloud object that's inside of my my script, right? And also, I should probably mention that I want to make it 3 clouds. Okay, so I want 3 clouds to be instantiated. I'm changing this number to 3. That's my cloud count. Okay, that's it. If I've done everything correctly, then I should be able to run this thing, and 3 clouds are going to be instantiated here. You're going to notice that right now, they're not part of my hierarchy. But when I click play, suddenly there's 3 clouds that say that they're clones, right? I've cloned my prefab or instantiated my prefab, right, into the scene. So this is another way of affecting my hierarchy. And if you notice now, right, each of my clouds is coming, and they've been only instantiated once. Those cloned objects don't go away. They just get reset, which is a little bit different than what you've seen in the tutorial. If you actually do the Space Shooter tutorial, they actually instantiate the objects every time, right? So every time they get destroyed, they get reinstantiated. I'm not going to do that. Every time I get destroyed or something happens, I'm going to reset the actual object back to where it's supposed to be, right? Or I'm going to, if I don't reset, I'm going to make some noise, right, that tells the player that he's hit his targets or whatever it's going to happen. All right, we're almost there. Like we've got, like some stuff going on. I'm resetting my objects. I've got these things flying around. I think this is a great stopping point for a break and for us to update our GitHub. So I'm going to go to git add dot git commit -m. And I'm going to say added game controller class, right? Game controller object, actually. All right, there we go. I'm going to do this git push origin master, which is going to actually push up to the master. And you guys have this code as well as my setup. So that way you can go from there. For now, I'm going to stop recording, and we'll take a 10-minute break, come back after people have a chance for a bathroom break and smoke and so on, and then we'll continue.